Title: The Ghost Who Lived in the Walls of My New Home. Before we begin tonight's story, remember, don't listen alone. And if something taps behind your wall while you're watching, don't turn around. Subscribe if you dare. The move-in day was supposed to mark a new beginning. The Walker family, Daniel, his wife, Elise, and their teenage daughter, Hannah, had bought a century-old Victorian house just outside Topeka, Kansas. It sat on a quiet rural road surrounded by dry fields and bare trees, its white paint peeling, its windows clouded by time. Daniel had always dreamed of restoring an old home, turning something forgotten into something beautiful again. But from the very first night, something about the house didn't feel right. The air inside was colder than outside, thick and heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. When Elise unpacked the dishes in the kitchen, she could swear she heard faint whispers between the clinking of glass. At first, she thought it was just the wind, until she realized there wasn't any. By evening, the house felt alive with strange noises. Soft tapping echoed through the hallways, rhythmic and deliberate, like knuckles rapping on hollow wood. Daniel laughed it off, saying it was the house settling. But Hannah noticed something odd every time the tapping stopped. It was replaced by silence so deep she could hear her own heartbeat. At midnight, the old grandfather clock one the previous owners had left behind began to chime on its own. Elise sat up in bed. The chime was distorted, off-key, as if something was wrong inside the clock's mechanism. She turned to Daniel, who was already awake, staring toward the doorway. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. But before either of them could move, there came another sound, faint footsteps from upstairs. They both froze. Hannah's bedroom was upstairs. Daniel ushed to the staircase, his heart pounding as he flicked on the hallway light. The bulb above him buzzed, then popped, plunging everything into darkness. For a few seconds, he stood there listening. The footsteps had stopped. The air was so cold it burned in his lungs. He called out, "Hannah?" No answer. When he reached her door, he pushed it open slowly. The room was dark, but he could see Hannah sitting upright in bed, her eyes wide and terrified. "Dad," she whispered. "Someone was in the wall." Daniel froze. "What?" She pointed to the corner near her bed. The old plaster wall was faintly vibrating, as if something was moving inside it. There was a soft scraping sound, slow and steady, like fingernails dragging against wood. Daniel pressed his ear to the wall. What he heard chilled him to the core. A whisper, muffled, childlike, repeating something he couldn't make out. He pulled back immediately, his face pale. "It's probably an animal," he muttered, but he didn't believe his own words. Hannah's eyes were filled with tears. "It said my name, Dad." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't answer. Instead, he told her to sleep in their room that night. When morning came, the sunlight made everything seem normal again almost. But when Daniel inspected the wall, he found something odd. There were faint impressions along the paint, like handprints pressed from the inside. That night, the noises came again. Louder this time. Not just tapping, but knocking. 3 knocks, then silence. 3 more. Then a voice. It was soft, almost polite, coming from behind the plaster. "Let me out." Elise screamed, backing away from the wall. Daniel grabbed a flashlight, sweeping it across the living room. The sound seemed to move with him, following through the walls as if something was crawling behind them. And then the floor vent rattled. Dust spilled out, and the whisper returned, louder now. "Let me out." Daniel shined the light toward the vent and saw something move. A pale shape, darting away into the darkness. He dropped the flashlight, his hands shaking. "We're leaving. Now." But Hannah was standing at the end of the hall, staring at the baseboard. Her voice was small when she said it, almost curious. "There's a door down there." Daniel turned. At the bottom of the wall, barely visible under the old wallpaper, was a small wooden panel. A hidden door. He crouched down and ran his fingers along the edge. It was old, very old, and sealed shut with rusty nails. Behind it, faintly, something breathed. Elise whispered, "Daniel, don't." But it was too late. He was already prying it open. The wood groaned as it gave way, releasing a gust of freezing air that smelled of rot and dust. Inside was darkness, deep, narrow, and endless, and written across the inside of the panel, in what looked like old charcoal, were 3 words: "Don't open again." Before anyone could speak, something knocked back from the other side of the wall this time, hard enough to make the entire house tremble. The next morning, sunlight poured through the cracked windows, soft and harmless. The kind of morning light that makes you question everything you thought you heard the night before. Daniel didn't sleep. None of them did. The words, "Don't open again," echoed in his head like a warning he couldn't shut off. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his coffee when Elise walked in. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. "I heard it again," she whispered. Daniel looked up. "Heard what?" She pointed at the ceiling. The tapping. It was moving through the walls, from our room to Hannah's. Hannah appeared in the doorway, holding something in her hand, a piece of paper, crumpled and yellowed. "I found this in the vent." Daniel unfolded it carefully. The paper was brittle, the writing almost gone. But he could make out a few words in shaky, slanted handwriting. "I can still hear them walking at night. They think I don't know they're watching me through the walls." He frowned. This must be old. Maybe from one of the previous owners. But Elise wasn't convinced. Who keeps notes in a vent? That night, the sounds returned. Only this time, they weren't random. It started with a faint tapping, then turned into scratching, deliberate and sharp, like nails dragging slowly across wood. Hannah clutched her blanket as the noise grew louder. Then came a low, steady whisper. Hannah. Her name drawn out like a sigh from deep inside the wall. She screamed, and the noise stopped instantly. Daniel rushed in, flashlight in hand. "What happened?" "It said my name," she gasped. "It knows me." Daniel shone the light across the wall, trying to find any cracks, any holes, any logical explanation. But there was nothing. Just cold, solid plaster. The next day, Daniel went to the town records office. He wanted answers. He found the house's file, and what he read made his blood run cold. The original owner of the property was a man named Thomas Alden, who lived there from 1903 to 1908. The file ended abruptly with a note. Presumed missing, no remains found. There were rumors, according to a newspaper clipping Daniel uncovered, that Alden believed the house had ears. Neighbors claimed he used to talk through the walls at night and that he had sealed something inside them before he vanished. Daniel came home late that afternoon, clutching the old documents. "I think he's still here," he said quietly to Elise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I think Thomas Alden never left this house." Elise stared at him, her voice trembling. "You think his ghost is in the walls?" Before he could answer, a loud thud echoed from upstairs, heavy, like a body hitting the floor. They ran to Hannah's room. She was standing in the middle of it, staring at the wall. Her hand was pressed against the plaster, and she whispered, "He's talking to me." Daniel grabbed her shoulders. "Who?" She turned to him slowly, eyes distant. "The man who lives here. He said he's cold. He wants out." That night, Daniel set up a camera in Hannah's room, determined to prove it was all in their heads. At 3:12 a.m., the camera caught it movement behind the wall. The plaster shifted, bending slightly outward, like something was pressing from inside. The audio was faint, but clear enough to hear, "Daniel, you opened my door." The wall cracked down the center, dust spilling out, and for a brief moment, a shadow passed across the lens, a human shape with hollow eyes and a mouth moving in silence. The next morning, Daniel reviewed the footage in disbelief. When he paused it on the shadow's face, he froze. It wasn't a stranger. It was him, his own face staring out from inside the wall, pale and distorted, mouth whispering words the camera didn't pick up. He slammed the laptop shut and looked at Elise. "We're leaving. Today." But when they tried to open the front door, it wouldn't budge. The knob wouldn't turn, the locks wouldn't move. Elise's eyes filled with tears. "We're trapped." From somewhere deep in the walls, the whisper came again. Calm, confident. "You let me out. Now you live here." Then the floor vent rattled and something small rolled out. It was another piece of paper, freshly written in the same slanted handwriting. It always starts with a knock. The third night was silent. Too silent. The family didn't speak, didn't sleep. Daniel sat by the front door with a crowbar in hand, but every time he blinked he swore the wallpaper rippled as if the walls were breathing. At 3 a.m., the tapping began again. Slow, rhythmic. It moved from one end of the house to the other, circling them. Elise clutched Hannah close. Then came the whisper, closer this time, clearer than ever. "Come back inside." The floorboards beneath Daniel's feet creaked. The crowbar slipped from his hand as the sound deepened footsteps, coming from within the walls themselves. The hidden panel in the hallway burst open. Cold air rushed out, carrying the stench of soil and decay. Daniel stepped forward, flashlight trembling, and shone it inside. There was a small, narrow room no bigger than a closet with rotted wooden beams and claw marks along the plaster. In the corner sat a pile of old bones wrapped in tattered fabric. A single word was carved above them. Thomas. Elise gasped. "He's been buried in the house." But before Daniel could react, the lights flickered, and a shadow rose from the pile, tall, human-shaped, its face blank but familiar. His own. It smiled and spoke in Daniel's voice. "You opened the door. You belong here now." The walls slammed shut. The next morning, neighbors reported seeing the house's curtains moving, as if someone were inside. But when police entered, the home was empty. The walkers were gone. On the wall near the vent, written in fresh black ink, were 5 chilling words. We live in the walls. If you thought this story was terrifying, wait until you hear the next one. Hit the subscribe button to see what's next.